All right, some real wrestling talk right now. As you guys know, I'm a huge wrestling fan, and I've always come and gone with, you know, my interest levels. Usually, if the product just gets kind of stale, usually walk away, or life happens. It's hard to really catch up with wrestling when you got a family and work and all that. But late last year or early last year, I really got into AEW, and I've stuck with it, the good and the bad. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that was this past Sunday's Double or Nothing. It's just one of those pay-per-views where I was really hoping it was going to be a lot better than what it was, and it just ended up not being up to their standard of a quality pay-per-view. When I watch pay-per-views for AEW, it's usually really good compared to their TV shows. And I want to reiterate, I am not a tribalist. I'm okay with WWE. It bores me. I like to compare WWE is like a grandma parking her car, and AEW is like a head-on collision. Which one are you going to look at? Which one are you going to stare at longer? Not taking anything away from AEW. They have some great stuff, but it seems like a rudderless ship sometimes, and I think that's where my biggest gripe comes with the promotion. But I chalk it up to growing pains, and maybe the booking's not the best, but the talent that they have on there and the up and comers are what keeps me watching. But this past Sunday's pay-per-view was just not good. There was a couple matches that were pretty decent, other than the constant run-ins with FTR, and I call Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal's tag team Lethal Nuts. That was an okay match, but there was just too much interference. I think if they would have just let them just wrestle, it would have been a lot better. The other good match was the buy-in, where Jeff Hardy kind of botched, but that was fun to watch. And oddly enough, the trios title match was not bad at all. I haven't been a fan of trios wrestling. I thought I would because I'm a huge tag team wrestling fan. So I really thought, yeah, trios wrestling is going to be for me, and it hasn't. I haven't liked many trios matches, but this one was okay, and I think it's the Acclaim are fun, and that's the thing about wrestling is there's a balancing act you have to play. So you get the one side of the goofiness, like the Luigi Pepperoni guy and Orange Cassidy, and then you got super serious. I think there's a good balance that you should have, and when a wrestling show goes too silly, like WWE used to do, where it was just all silly shenanigans, I haven't really watched recently, so it's hard for me to really gauge how they've been lately, but I like it a little bit of everything, a little mix, and that's why I don't completely hate high flying and trampoline wrestling, but when that's all there is, it kind of turns me off. And going back to gimmicks, this pay-per-view had nothing but gimmick matches, and at some point, I think there was a ladder match, there was a four-way for the world title, there was the trios, which had the stipulation, I think, and the Anarchy in the Arena, there was like a really screwy finish on the TBS women's title, and then the women's match, I didn't like the outcome. I think that was the only normal match, which is one of the matches that I actually enjoyed too. It was just a really odd pay-per-view. And I'm hoping I can just chalk it up to growing pains, because I'm recording this as a fan. Like, you can call me Marky March and the Funky Bunch all you want. I enjoy wrestling. It's my escape from the horrors of the real world, and when wrestling makes you just want to like turn it off And that's where my gripe is with this pay-per-view. I was okay with MJF winning the title, and then I hear Excalibur say, now to our second main event. So I'm like, okay, another match, cool. Then I hear what match it is. And I've been a fan of Kenny Omega for a while. He doesn't bother me. I could do without so many spots, but, you know, that's just modern wrestling now. But I've never really been a big fan of the Young Bucks. I could take them or leave them. But the Blackpool Combat Club, it's one of those stables that when they were created, I was really excited about. But as the more they featured them, the more I realized that this is just a really bad put together stable. I don't even think the WWE writers could have done it justice. It's not good, a good program for them. And there's so much wasted talent, like Claudio, Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson. I always screw that up. I'm not a fan of Wheeler Yuta. I just don't see what the appeal is with him. Same thing with Garcia. But then you have Jon Moxley, who wants to make every match a hardcore match. And all the people that have known me my whole life, since I started watching wrestling at a young age, know that I cannot stand hardcore wrestling. It's just one of those things where it's not wrestling. It's just shock value. And I think that's the biggest problem with the anarchy in the arena. It's just shock value. It's just, hey, let's do the craziest shit and just try to get people to watch this and hope that, you know, it keeps people in the seats. And I was watching it with my brother, my cousin, my wife, and my kids, and my brother's boyfriend. No lie, as soon as this match kind of started up, almost the whole room cleared out. I tried to get through it, but by the end, it was almost midnight. I think it probably past midnight. I was just like, yeah, I'm out. So I can't imagine if people were actually in the arena watching this. Like, were you really going to stay through this whole mess? They didn't even start. They barely started in the ring. I think most of them just started fighting out in the crowd. Jon Moxley's horrible song just kept playing, and it was played by a band. I don't want to go through the whole thing, because normally I like to write notes, like little cliff notes, in case I do want to record a pay-per-view. Like Full Gear, it's like the polar opposite. Full Gear was such a great pay-per-view. It was a lot of really great matches interspersed with, you know, some mediocre ones, but it was a good pay-per-view. This pay-per-view just left me like, imagine getting a steak and it looks delicious, but then you bite into it and it's just garbage. That's how this pay-per-view felt, and the conversation needs to be had. Like, at what point will the higher-ups at AEW, which is only one person, from what I understand, gonna figure out that you don't need a team of writers, but you do need someone who can book, and not just book for spots. It seems like that's what Tony Khan likes to do, is he books around surprise entrances and then surprise swerves and stuff like that. And some people don't want to watch that. Like, some people just want just wrestling, a story being told. And as much as I do not like Roman Reigns, I can't stand the Bloodline. That's a good example of a story that has taken, I think, closer to 2 years at this point, where it's a evolving story, and obviously it's dragged out way too long. But I haven't really watched recently. I think I stopped watching the main Raw and SmackDown months ago, so I've caught glimpses of the pay-per-views, but like I said, it's really hard to keep my attention with WWE. But just, you know, to digress, that's what I'm talking about. It's that AEW could use some of that long form storytelling. a good example is right now they have the opportunity to bring back CM Punk, which, love him or hate him, he's a draw and he's money. So right now, since MJF won the title or kept the title, you can run a program. It doesn't have to be, all balls to the wall right away. They could draw this out where CM Punk comes back and says, hey, I never lost this title. Let me challenge. And now MJF holds the cards, and MJF could say, you want your title back, you're going to have to prove it. And then at some point, some authority figure, maybe Tony Khan or someone that he makes the authority figure, can say, we're going to hold some sort of storyline, stuff like that. It keeps people invested. Whereas right now, everything feels fragmented. They'll start what seems to be a storyline, and then the next week they just drop it, or they forget about it, or they move it to their online show or Rampage. The problem is, I don't always catch Rampage. I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't watch Rampage. Friday nights are a death knell for TV. Even when people watch TV, I don't even think people watch TV on Fridays, because Friday's like that day that everybody wants to go out, and then when they get home, they just crash because they've been working all week. So I think the Saturday Collision's a good jumping off point to maybe right the ship. And my hope, and this is a hope, because I am not a dirt sheet kind of guy. I barely comment on wrestling. I just enjoy it. I had to get this off my chest. But I think that the best course of action is for Tony Khan to get a veteran that all the wrestlers in the back kind of respect, look up to, like a big brother, and make them the lead booker. Someone who can book all the matches. Obviously, it's got to go through Tony Khan first, but someone who can say, okay, this is the storyline we're going to go with. All right, this is the matches, and not throw everything all at once to, on an episode of Dynamite or an episode of Rampage, because it's like you give them a cartridge full of ammo, and instead of putting it on semi-auto, they just use the whole magazine. So I think it's better to just highlight some of your really great wrestlers, push some of your younger talent, and leave the goofy stuff for maybe one or two moments of the show. But every show starts off with Orange Cassidy, which I don't personally have a problem with him. I think he's fine in bursts, but they've chicken-holed. They put Orange Cassidy in this position now where they've almost made him invincible, because he's beaten all these. I call them mid-carders. That's not what I mean by that. It's just I look at the International Championship as a mid-card belt, almost like the Intercontinental. They put him up against all these guys, and he's won clean through injuries, and then he wins the Battle Royal at Double or Nothing. It's like you've now put him in a position where he's invincible. So the next person he loses to has to either be someone new to the company or someone who has been around and just decided to come back. Like a Andrade or Miro. Other than that, he's beaten the whole roster of all these guys. So now it's either get the belt off of him so that he can challenge for the world title, or he has to drop it to one of these guys that he's already beat. It's not good booking, and I'm not a booker. I've been watching wrestling for a long time. My dad used to work for the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico, so he's kind of shared that love of wrestling with me since I was a kid. So I know what good wrestling is, and I know what bad wrestling is, and that's why I think, the hardcore stuff, get it off the TV. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody has to bleed every episode. So I really do think that if they book AEW correctly, it will find its fans and stop having WWE live rent-free in their minds. It's good to have competition, but don't be the antithesis to the competition. Just be your own thing. And I think AEW needs that. AEW needs to get away from trying to be WWE Light or the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era. They're called eras for a reason. They're in the past. It's time for something new. And that's what I thought AEW was going to be. I thought AEW was going to be something completely new. Something for the fans that, stop watching wrestling because of the goofy shit that WWE used to put out. So, I think I've ranted enough, but it's just something I want to get off my chest, especially after that pay-per-view. It was just such a letdown, and I love a lot of this roster, and I've come to share my art with a lot of these wrestlers, so I want them to succeed, and I want this company to do good. So I think, deep down inside, I want this to be a popular promotion, and I want it to reach further than their core audience. Because the core audience is obviously the guys who liked New Japan and Ring of Honor. But you want to get some of those casual fans from WWE, some of the fans that, I don't know how old some of you guys who are going to watch this, but back in the day when they had WCW and Monday Night Raw on the same night, I used to watch both shows. Like, whenever one was on commercial, I just flip back and constantly flip back. If there was a match I didn't like, flip back. And, I was a pretty hardcore fan, but I'm pretty sure that there's fans out there that will watch both products. And as long as it's different enough, it's a good example. I like to compare it to, you don't have to just like one thing. I love Tekken. Tekken is one of my favorite fighting games. But I don't only just play Tekken. I play Street Fighter, I play Soul Calibur. So having that different options and being able to enjoy different things. And so I want that same thing for AEW and WWE. And I think there's an audience for both. So that's just going to wrap up my little rant, if you want to call it that, or just my commentary on AEW and the current state of AEW and Double or Nothing. I hope you guys enjoyed this art I did of Konosuke Takeshita. I always want to say Takeshita. I don't know. Takeshita. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if it's something you'd like to hear more often. Just a little off-the-cuff video on AEW and wrestling. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to keep it over 9,000. Take care.